All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Healing Intentions. Today, I have a super duper special guest, Dr. Nadia Schulkind. Welcome, Nadia.
Thank you, Adrian. It's so good to be here.
We finally made this happen.
Uh-huh.
So many times we've been chilling up here in this amazing watchtower that you have up here with this amazing ocean view. Wish that you guys could all see it. And I'm like, we're having these amazing conversations, and I'm like, we should have just hit record on this and share this to the world. So here we are. I'm really glad we could make this happen. Thank you so much.
Of course.
And so I like to just, keep it really casual and start off with a nice, simple, just tell me about your story. Tell me, like, really what got you into acupuncture. I mean, let's start there, since that's what you do. You're an acupuncturist, a doctor of Chinese medicine. So tell me about that story and kind of what led you to Chinese medicine, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Of course.
So excited about this.
Mm-hmm.
I've had such a magical journey in life, period.
Mm-hmm.
Life has been such an adventure. And of course, like, these adventures have led me to where I am now.
Yep.
And as far as Chinese medicine and my path there, I come from a family of a lot of doctors or firefighters and nurses, and we have it in our blood to really help people feel better or find a solution to help you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been drawn to that as well. And so it was a question of how and what is my way of doing that, because I watched how the Western medical system treated my dad. He's an emergency room doctor, and it was really stressful for him. And he was constantly trying to find different ways to kind of get out of the system while still being in it and helping people.
Yep.
He even created like a small business in Kauai where he did house calls, and like he would come to your backyard and sew you up, and he would cut out this middleman, and it was like so amazing.
That's
because
awesome.
he wasn't overcharging, and you weren't waiting in the emergency room for like hours, and et cetera, et cetera. So
Yep.
really inspired by him in a lot of ways. And also, I saw I needed to take a different path, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I went on this like walkabout basically around the world and discovering different modalities and seeing what happened. At the time, my physical pain was in my shoulders. I had bicipital tendonitis. And then I also had played so many sports in high school that my elbows had quite a lot of tendonitis as well.
Yep.
And I was trying different things, and I met an acupuncturist who, within one treatment, the pain was gone.
Wow.
And I was like, this is really cool. But what also drew me in was it wasn't just about my physical body. It was also like they were asking me about my emotions and how I was feeling. And like it was incorporating the mind, the body, and the spirit. And I was like, this is the thing.
Yeah.
This is the thing, because that's how we heal.
Right.
Right. And I started to dive more into my sadness. And actually, as a kid, I was constantly on a nebulizer. I had really bad asthma. I still have a very raspy voice, and I lose it really fast. So if there's a lot of clearing, that's why, everybody. But when I was a kid, it was especially like difficult for me to breathe. And I was on a lot of lung steroids, especially in my 20s, just to not be coughing, basically, and to get the phlegm out and stop. I was having bronchial spasms like nonstop. And I started to go on this journey through Chinese medicine about the lungs. And what is the emotion of the lungs? It's grief and sadness. And I realized that I had a lot of grief and sadness from certain things in my life. I was adopted at birth. There was a lot that came up for me through life with that. And I think I know I was holding on to a lot.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And as I started to process my grief and my sadness, my breathing started to get better. And after I really went into it, I never used my inhaler again. I've never been on a nebulizer again. I've never been on a lung steroid again. And it really settled itself away. And I'm talking like this is like I think I must have been 22 or 23, like when that process began of the clearing.
Wow.
So it was like 20 plus years of literally not breathing.
Yep.
And then all of it went away without anything besides me processing my own emotional trauma.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
It's like physiologically nothing changed in your lungs, but the deeper aspects, your energetics and the spiritual side all shifted, and so that allowed the physical to then change. Like, what an amazing concept.
Yeah. And I've always been an athlete. I was always in shape. It wasn't like anything like that. It was like solely like a spiritual thing. And that was when I was like, there's something to this, to Chinese medicine.
For sure.
I want to learn more.
Yeah. They figured out a few things 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, right?
And it's so natural. It feels natural. Like once you really tap into some of these concepts and theories that have been around for the last thousands of years, like, this is a manual for the human body that they don't teach you in our Western schools, but it makes so much sense. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you have an amazing story of living in a lot of different places, and you mentioned Kauai there for a second. So you lived in Hawaii. So talk about kind of like your progression through life, like your life story. I'm just so, we've talked about it, one-on-one, and it's just such a fascinating, awesome story that I just think people should hear. So I just want to go through that, if you don't mind, and kind of take me through a chronological progression of Nadia's life.
Oh my God, do we have enough time for that?
Yeah, we got all the time in the world. No limits here.
Okay, maybe I'll start going, and then if there's a niche you want to go into.
Okay, cool.
I think one of like the biggest milestones and earliest ones for me was being adopted at birth. And that really set me apart from most people in my life.
Yeah.
And put me on this path of like, okay, I'm different. I'm different. My bonds are different. My concept of family is different. My concept of blood versus like chosen family is different. And I think that always made me different. And I'm very different.
I love it.
And that really set the path for me. And so I also have a brother with Down syndrome, and we're very close in age. We're only 11 months apart. And I like to say that he really taught me how to communicate energetically, because he didn't always have the verbal ability to express himself.
Right.
So from when I was a kid, born, basically, because we grew up together, till even now, he's constantly teaching me about how reading like the energy of somebody, because we would communicate non-verbally.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I think that really set me into this space of like being able to connect with people in a very unique way. And it helps me a lot with what I do now at work.
Right.
At Solarè, my private clinic, my private acupuncture clinic.
Yep. Amazing.
So I went to this really unique high school.
Okay.
Called High Tech High International.
Okay.
And at the time it was still an experiment and Bill Gates and Oprah were actually invested into it.
Wow.
And my specific version of High Tech High was a traveling high school. And most of this, not most of it, but I think about 40% of the student body was foreign students.
Wow.
And it was here in San Diego. I was like one of the first graduating classes. And every year we would go traveling for a month with a little group of kids or students. And you were only allowed to bring like one backpack. And you were just like out. You were in the jungle, you were rafting, you were climbing, you were in the ocean, you were like staying in Thailand in these little woven bamboo huts out in the middle of nowhere, like floating on water. Like they weren't even on the land.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like wild. And so I did all of this at like a really young age. I went to Dominican Republic, Thailand, and other places. Yeah, it was really cool.
Amazing.
And that opened my eyes to like the world.
Yeah.
I was like, there's poor people that I like didn't know about when I was really, really young, or I should say there's poverty that I became aware of. That's a better way to word that.
Right, sure.
Which opened my eyes to a lot, about, wow, there's people living in a very different way than I am. And there's a lot there.
Because you're born and raised here in Ocean Beach, San Diego.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which is an amazing place. If anybody hasn't ever been, it's a beautiful bubble of just paradise, really, and it's got its own unique vibe, and it's like a vortex over here.
It is like a vortex. You
come to OB, and it's like I don't know how to describe it, but you've born and raised here, so it's I like to say it's like you're one, like like a unicorn or like a rare person of like, I don't know that many people that are born and raised here in San Diego, so it's pretty cool.
Especially OB. Yeah, I lived on Newport till I was 12, and then we just moved down the street. And now I'm on Newport again.
There you go.
It's crazy.
I love it. I love that. So you're high-tech high.
Yeah.
And going through all of that.
Yeah. So we traveled a lot, opened my eyes to a lot, and I realized how like big of a desire I had to see more of the world and see more of how people were living and connect more with all different types of people and how I could do that.
Yeah.
You know, and then I graduated and I was like, from then on, I moved to Hawaii. I lived in Oahu. I lived in Kauai. I lived in Australia for a year. I lived in Nicaragua for a couple years. I lived out of a bag for a very long time, just bopping around. And El Salvador, Costa Rica. I went to Israel. Like, yeah, it was amazing. Panama. And through that, I was just so hungry for the human experience, right? And not just my human experience, which is really all I have, but like I wanted to do my best to tap into other people's.
Yep.
And
I love
it was amazing. Yeah. Pick a country.
So that's a good question. I really got fascinated by your story of moving down to Nicaragua. Talk more about that, because that was a cool, just the whole thing. I think you talked about that the first time we ever hung out.
Yeah.
And you just told me about that. So if you don't mind, please repeating that one more time for me.
Oh my gosh, I would love to, because it's one of the coolest like experiences I've ever had.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I was like, they gave us a prompt for a journal thing. And I ended up writing that I don't know where it came from, because when I was in high school, nobody was going to Nicaragua. And I wrote, I'm moving to Nicaragua one day. And I was set on it. Like, I knew I needed to do it. I was like, this is going to happen. I was like 15. And I would even go home and tell my mom, like, I'm moving to Nicaragua one day. And my mom's like, why? And what are you going to do in Nicaragua? I'm like, that's a great question. I don't know. But I've always been a surfer. And I was really committed to surfing for a very long time. And
like, how committed? Talk about that a little bit.
Like, up at 5 a.m. all through high school. I started surfing when I was like, my dad was pushing me in at like 3 years old.
Wow.
Traveled around the world surfing, taught surfing from like 11 years old till 20s. And which eventually was what I was doing in Nicaragua, was teaching surfing.
Right.
And I was sponsored, and it was really fun. I had a great surfing career. And yeah, my body feels that, though, I will say. Definitely feels it. So
you go down to Nicaragua.
Well,
so you're planning.
My mom's asking me what I'm going to do there.
Right.
And I had watched a lot of surf videos, especially with women in it. And I was like following this gal named Holly Beck. And I was like, I saw she moved to Nicaragua. I was like, that's the thing. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go work for Holly Beck in Nicaragua. And I was like, this is perfect. You know, it's like everything I need. And flash forward, I ended up graduating my undergrad, my bachelor's in PR and communication in Hawaii. And I'm sitting at Thanksgiving dinner with a bunch of random people at this table. I got put at the random table. And there's a German guy there. And then he's like, what are you going to do now that you've graduated? And I'm like, I'm moving to Nicaragua, you know? And he's like, no, you're not. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. And he was so intense. He was like, women get raped there. People are going to steal all your stuff.
Whoa.
The poverty. Yeah, it was like actually like really gnarly. I was like, whoa. Like, he had to just like throw that out at like Thanksgiving dinner. And he's just like saying all this terrible stuff and telling me I'm not going. And I was like, and eventually I just slammed the table. Boom. And I was like, I'm fucking going. Fuck you. And I actually cussed at him. Because he was cussing at me.
Perfect.
And he just, it all like settled. And he goes, actually, yes, you are. And if you want to go, you meet me at this coffee shop tomorrow with a piece of paper and a pencil or pen. And I'm going to literally give you everything that you need to go. I own a bunch of land down there. I can tell you can handle it. And yeah.
So it was like testing you. How bad did you really want to go?
Yeah. He's like, it's not for the faint of heart at that time. And especially where I was going to go. And I did. I met him and showed up with the pen and paper, and we took all these notes. And before I knew it, I was 21 years old, heading down to Nicaragua with a backpack, I think 2 surfboards, a skateboard, and like nothing else.
Wow.
And I ended up going out to his land, and I lived out in the middle of nowhere in northern Nicaragua near a wave that is now super popular, but at the time was not, called the Boom. And it was just farmlands. And I lived in this little tiny bodega, and the closest person was like, as far as OB goes, like 2 blocks away. And the power would go out every night. It was like super isolation. I brought every single journal. I love writing. Like, you know, kids like usually get like a cap on like, you have to at least write 2 to 3 pages.
Right.
The second I started writing, they're like, Nadia, you can write 8 tops, and that's it. I was like, so I had a lot of journals.
That's funny.
Yeah, so I brought all my journals of all my emotions, all my trauma and everything, and I brought them out into the middle of nowhere by myself, and for 3 months I sat and I read them and I processed all my childhood trauma.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
And then I also like surfed every day. I've adopted all these like little random dogs that couldn't make it into the cool dog packs. And there's scorpions and spiders and all this stuff. And I would walk through all these cow fields every single day by myself with my little trail of weird little dogs. They would wait for me on the beach, and I'd surf and get so barreled because this wave is like heavy, frothy barrels. And when I was there at that time, there was nobody there. Like, I would look to the left, look to the right, and there was maybe one person, and I knew him from being there.
Right.
Now you go, and there's like 50 people in the water.
Wow.
Yeah. And
wow.
So towards the end of my trip, I'm like, how long do I want to make this? I'll abbreviate it a little bit more. I was surfing the Boom. And I was by myself. No one was in the water. And I look way down the way, and I see like a person down there, and they're like paddling towards me. And as this person gets closer and closer and closer, I go, oh my God, it's a girl. Oh my God. Oh, it's Holly Beck. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, what? We're in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
I had no idea where she was. Like, that whole dream from high school was like so long ago. And so like, you know, and so she paddles up and she goes like, what are you doing out here? I was like, I'm just surfing, and I'm like kind of doing a walkabout. She's like, yeah, but like people like you aren't really out here, you know, like a white girl, like I mean, like, you know, I don't know, it didn't match. And she's like, where are you staying? And blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh, I'm like staying at this farm up the road. And she's like, well, have you ever taught surfing? I'm like, I've taught surfing since I was 11 years old. And she's like, there's this hurricane that hit New Jersey. I need a surf instructor.
Wow.
You know, maybe do you want to come work for me? And in my head, I'm like, what in the world is happening right now? This is crazy.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to bring my business partner, Jackie, to come interview you in a little bit. I was like, whoa, sweet. So I go home to the farm. And one of my doggies, that like was my buddy because I was in isolation. Like, you talk to your dogs in general. I talk to my dog a lot here, but when you're like alone, like way out there for months, you really talk to your dogs. So you get really close to him. One of my doggies, like his leg got macheted open. Oh. Like huge gash, and it was because he ate the neighbor's chickens, and like the neighbor had warned him, I will say, but like chickens are like a big deal. Like that's like it's like thousands of dollars in our world, you know. And so I get home, and like my buddy's leg is just filleted open. I'm like, fuck, okay, I'm supposed to have this interview, but I got to fix this. And my dad, being a doctor, sent me with these medical staples, and I'm like trying to hold the dog still while I'm trying to staple his leg together, but I couldn't hold the flesh together enough.
Holy shit.
To get the staples to reach across. And so I'm like trying to not tackle the dog, but pin him down enough, and he's squirming around, and there's blood everywhere, and his like flesh is hanging out. And I'm like, fuck, and I'm just like so stressed. And then Jackie and Holly show up on their horses, and I'm on the floor, and I just like, I know I'm supposed to have a business meeting right now, and I've been always wanting to work for you, but like, can you guys help me hold my dog's leg together so I can staple it shut?
Oh my God.
And Jackie looks at Holly and goes, she's hired, and yes, we will help you.
Wow. You never told me that before.
Oh,
That's
really?
So cool. That's an amazing story.
Oh my God. This whole the dog leg thing was like such an ordeal too, because it got infected. And I went to go work for her. So the farm where I was at and Coco Loco where I was working was about a 20, 30 minute bike ride.
Okay.
Depending on if you had to walk through the rivers with the bike or if it was low tide and you could take the beach the whole way. And when the doggy's leg got infected, and I was over there, like I was like, he's gonna die, because it was like really gross. Like there was like flies in it, and like it was white and all gnarly.
Yeah.
And Holly ended up going and getting me antibiotics, and she was like, okay, so you are working, but if while the girls are in yoga, if you want to ride your bike there and give him the injections, the antibiotics, you can do that. Wow. So that gave me like an hour. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so I'm like full speed after like working all day. Like we're up at 5 a.m., like full speed riding my bike. Like there's no roads. Right. Like this is like.
Right. Like gravel, yeah.
I'm like,
You're so funny.
I'm like, just put my music on like at level 100, and I was just like booking it. And so like I was saying, like you'd have to carry it through the rivers, the bicycle, or take the low tide, which is like cut out like 20 minutes. And I would go and give him the shots. And I'd bike ride back and like finish the workday, and it was like so gnarly. And so day 3 or 4, I was walking through. I had all these cuts all the time. Like you've seen my legs, have you? Like they're like there's scars everywhere from fun. And one time I was walking through the river with the bike, and I looked down, and there was just like poop. Like there was like, it was like cow poop, and like you could just see that it was super gnarly water. And it wasn't moving because it was tied, like it had gotten trapped. I don't know what caused it, but I was like, shit. And I like looked at all my cuts, and I was like, shit. So my foot got infected, and I started to ask myself, is it worth it to finish the antibiotics for this random dog? You know, I started to go into that mindset. I'm like, this dog would have fucking died without me anyway, you know? And like, is his life more important than like my cuts on getting infected and like my life? And like, why I'm like destroying my body every day to come give him these injections, and like, I'm going to leave. Like I went through this whole thing, and I was like, I'm not fucking going tomorrow. And I didn't go. I didn't sleep the entire night. Like it was so not me. What I know now because of that experience. Like I was testing out who I was.
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, this is not me.
Wow.
And I was like, never again. And I will finish all of these antibiotics, and I will go through the rivers, and I will take care of myself, right? Like I cleaned my wounds, and I was fine. It did get infected, actually. I had to take something for it, but like my foot. But I left that whole experience like with closure versus had I like just given up on the dog, you know? And I just, it really solidified for me that like all lives matter. Like, you know, whether it's an animal's life or a human's life or whatever, like, or like a freaking plant, you know, it's like all of this like living beings, like we're all so connected. Yep. The more we take care of each other, like the better the world is. Yep. It was a really potent like growth. Nicaragua was so much growth for me. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. So the dog, how did a dog end up being okay? Dog lived, yeah. Wow. Yeah. And got adopted. Wow. Yeah. What an amazing story. Yeah. Wow. So that's Nicaragua growth learning phase for Nadia. Yeah. Amazing. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I know, it's a whole journey. That was a lot. That went down there. So you leave Nicaragua, and then what happens? What's next? What did I do after Nicaragua? I think after Nicaragua is when I started to bop around more. Okay, like I was in Nica for like 2 years or so, and then I went to like Israel and Panama, and like I mean after that was really Australia chapter with stuff sprinkled in. I moved to Australia for a year. Tell me about Australia. What was that all about? I don't know much about your story down there. All of these like main destinations were about surfing. Okay, that's the highlight of it all. Okay. And but I remember I saw this photo of. It was so fun. Like looking back on myself, I see how I've had a lot of like a childlike wonder. And I saw this photo of the 12 apostles. Have you seen that? It's like amazing. Like, yeah, my parents have been there. It's really cool. It's amazing. Like, and I remember just seeing it, and like, again, I told my mom, I'm like, I'm gonna go there one day. And then I was like, where is it? And I was like, okay, it's in Australia. Yep. I'm going to Australia then, you know. And so I got a visa and like got a working visa and everything like that. And I went and moved to Byron Bay. I actually lived in Suffolk. It was like right outside of Byron Bay, but it was like a bike ride into town, which I appreciated that. I didn't need to be like in all of it. And geez, like the surf in Australia is incredible. And there's lots of snakes. And there's lots of big spiders.
The deadliest animals in the world live there.
I almost stepped on 2 of the most deadly snakes. I was like doing my laundry one day, and I like, you hang everything on the line. You don't really put it in the dryer in Australia. Right. So I'm like walking with the big pile outside to the line, and something told me to like kind of like look over the pile. And right in that moment, like right below me is a brown snake. And I swear the snake looked up at me, and I looked at it, and I screamed, and I was like, ah, through my laundry. And I swear I heard the snake do the same thing. Ah! And we both went the opposite ways.
Are the brown snakes really
That's
bad?
like really bad.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other one is like a red belly. And then there was like, I lived on an estuary.
What is that?
It's like basically like our backyard was like this big, it was like swampy kind of like behind our, so there was, I mean, one time I was riding my bike home. I was a bartender at a pizza place, and there was a snake that was in the road, and it went all the way across the road. I don't know what it was, and I don't know what kind of big snake it was, but it was huge, and it was probably like 10 plus feet, and it was fully stretched out. And I'm like, fuck, like, how am I going to get home? Yeah, it was wild.
So what did you have to do?
I went the long way, all the way around. It added like so much time and effort. I had to go up a big hill. It was like, ugh. But the craziest one was, so I was stayed in Suffolk for most of it, did a lot of road trips, and then I ended up quitting the job. And that was the last actually table I ever served.
I remember this story you told me.
Yeah, like I had a lot of fun at this job, but I had been working in the restaurant industry for so long, like most of my life, really. And I had this table, and they were just like so rude. They were cussing at me. They kept calling me a Yankee and all this stuff, and like screaming at me from across the restaurant. I just remember being like, this is the last table I'm ever serving. I'm done. And I quit, and I went on a 2.5-3 month road trip, living in a 1985 Nissan Patrol with my friend Erin, and we took off through the Outback. We were just in the Outback, living in a roof tent in a car that was like overheating the whole time. We had no AC. It was 140 outside. I definitely fainted twice. And, yeah. And we were just living out in the bush. Like, we were like going and finding, like, Australia is like desolate, deadly land. And then all of a sudden you're like stumble on like a total oasis. And like, I'm talking like palm trees and water, crystal clear waters. And like, it's like wild. Wow. And then you drive a little bit farther, and it's just like dead not raccoons, kangaroos lining the streets, and like, just like fucking gnarly. Yeah.
Wow. I've never been to Australia, but we have some family down there I really want to go check. Did you get to go to like Melbourne and Sydney? And
I went down there too. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And then, it was, I forgot where I was going with that other part, but.
The Outback and the animals.
Living in the Outback.
Wow.
Oh, more snakes. I was just thinking about snakes more. Like we like pulled up on this one place. We were like parked on the bush, getting ready to like call it a night. There's like this screaming sound like coming out of the bushes. Yeah. And in my head, like being like living in Oahu and living in OB, I'm like, it's a crackhead. Like, you know, like I'm like, this is a crackhead in the bushes, and he's like having a mental breakdown. And then, but then it was like really getting closer and closer. So I'm like backing away. And then this wallaby comes flying out with like a 10-foot snake attached to its ass. Whoa. And like the wallaby's like trying to come to us. Like, we're gonna like do save something. Yeah. And I'm like, bro, like I want to help you, but like, whoa. Wow. And it's bouncing around, the snake's flying around, and it was like crazy. And then it flung off, and I like ran into the car. I was so scared. And my
That's amazing.
It was crazy.
Wow.
I actually got really sick though towards the end of that trip. I definitely got parasites. Like we were swimming in crazy water, and you know, just living rough, rugged. Yeah. And, I'm sure you have some multiple types of parasites from all your different journeys and travels. You have a whole family going on. Thanks, Adrian. That's
not anymore.
You've never said anything sweeter to me.
Maybe not anymore. I'm sure you've cleared it all, but I'm sure they've had their time.
You know how I got rid of them?
No.
So I was like really, really, really sick.
Yeah.
And I went to Western medicine. I was so desperate. I was like fainting, and like my blood pressure was like, everything was like fucked up. I was like, this is how I die.
Wow.
And I ended up going like and doing all this research. This is before I started school for Chinese medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It was papaya seeds.
Uh-huh.
This is the only thing that helped. And 2 months of like debilitating like pain and agony and not being able to eat. I lost so much weight.
Wow.
I was like, my whole body was like freaking out. It would like randomly like shake and compress. Like it was like the weirdest thing. And chewing up, like I went back to Kauai. Mm-hmm. My parents were there. They flew me back, and I was like, got all these tests because fucking Darwin Hospital said I had pancreatic tumors. Ooh. Which is, you're like gonna die.
Yeah.
And like everyone's like, come home.
Yeah.
And
wow.
So I got flown back, like super emergency status. I was so sick.
Wow.
But there is this motto in Darwin that like, if in doubt, fly out. Don't go to the hospitals.
Is Darwin a place in Australia?
Yeah, it's like all the way in the north.
Okay.
Where there's everything wants to kill you, but like apparently their medical system's not that awesome.
When in doubt, fly out.
Yeah, that's what they were telling me. Like,
okay.
And then so I flew out, and my dad worked on Kauai, so I went to the hospital there and got a bunch of tests and stuff. I didn't have tumors, but I still was so sick.
Wow.
Yeah, and like my vitals were fucked up. And
for sure.
Yeah, like eventually like 2 months in, just was like, okay, what did like people in the Amazon do, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was eating like literally almost an entire papaya seeds worth of seeds, and like they would chew them. So instead of taking like the enzymes like from the store,
right,
you chew them because they're like peppercorns. Mm-hmm. So if you slightly chew them, it scrapes your intestines on the way down.
Wow.
Yeah, so it scrapes the parasites out from the walls.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's really fucking hard to do. It's disgusting.
Really?
Oh yeah. Have you ever eaten a papaya seed?
I have, actually. When we were down in Costa Rica for Envision, we were having a bunch of the papaya. It was so good and yummy and the best fruit I've ever had. And obviously eating the actual fruit, but then somebody was like, the seeds are supposed to be good for you too. So we were like, kind of crunch and chew on them, and I was like, they're intense.
They're intense.
Well,
like, it's like eating peppercorns.
Right.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's not the most pleasant thing, but the papaya itself, I know, is like an amazing digestive enzyme. The papain and the different things in there. So
yeah,
makes sense that wow.
And yeah, there's this scrapey part that's like apparently like when you really are like having the parasites, that's what gets them out. Wow. So I did that, and after like 3 days of doing that was like the most relief I had felt in 2 months.
Wow.
And I remember I was like doing this walk, and I would do a walk every day because I was like, otherwise, like, I'm going to go crazy. And this big owl, like, flew, and it was, like, flying straight at me, like, huge wingspan. And it, like, just, like, flew, like, straight at my face. And, like, not, like, in a scary way. I felt totally grounded. And we were just, like, looking at each other's eyes, and it, like, literally came so close and then just veered off. But it was, like, looking at me, like, into my soul. And, like, from that point on, I really started to feel so much better. It was, like... And owls are symbolized like transitions.
Okay.
And like they keep coming up in my life, but it was like a really beautiful moment.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know you got to that dire of a situation.
Oh yeah. I thought I was going to die. I was like, this is how I die. At least I'm in Kauai. Like, wow. It's beautiful here. Yeah.
So you accepted you accepted the death coming. And so ever since then, I'm sure you've had some wild experiences, like at Burning Man, for example, that have brought you to that feeling or close to that feeling, and you're like, oh, I've been here before, I'll be good.
Yeah, it's funny, like I've been in so many situations where I was like, this is how I die. Like really, like especially traveling, like where I would travel and the things we would do, like like crazy shit. Boats and motorcycles and like storms and like horses and just like these crazy like experiences.
Wow.
And we have this friend in Nicaragua. He was like our buddy. We had like a little trio. It was like me, Jackie, and this guy named Victor. And Victor was Nicaraguan, and he was always with me and Jackie when we were like, it was like we were three on a motorcycle going through rivers, pouring lightning everywhere in the middle of nowhere, or like riding these horses and like this storm comes and like the lightning is so friction that the mane is like standing straight up, and like every time Victor's just like, I've seen worse. Or I've seen worse. And we're always like, oh, Victor, are we going to die? He's like, I've seen worse.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so like now I'm in that more of a mindset because of this close to death stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, at this point, I've seen a lot of worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's interesting.
Perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. But Burning Man is amazing. I loved going in that direction too.
Yeah, so let's talk about Burning Man, because I have yet to experience it. You are a veteran. How many times? 8?
8 times.
8-time burner. So talk about it. What?
Oh my gosh.
Talk about your. I know there's so much you could talk multiple podcasts, I'm sure, just about Burning Man, but just why you love it so much. What your favorite parts have been. Like, just talk about Burning Man for a bit.
Yeah, I love to explain. Like, I love to see. When someone asked me, like, in the beginning, like, what is Burning Man, And I like to say it's this blank canvas called the playa, which is actually white and blank and flat, And then it's like you took all of human imagination and just splattered it onto the canvas. And it's limitless. It's incredible. And it's like, it's such a beautiful experience. Yeah. And when people are unleashed in that way, like really a lot of magic happens. And debauchery too. Like it was like started on like kind of an anarchy mindset.
Right. Right.
It's come around to more of this like space of like, oh, love and that and that. But and it's very structured for how unstructured it is. But yeah, I've been 8 years and I've had some cool projects. 1 year, so there's this place called the Stilts Bar. You have to have stilts to get to the bar. It's really tall. And I remember being like, this is like so not fair. Like me and my little psychedelic mind. I'm like, this isn't fair. I don't have stilts. Where's the radical inclusion? And so I'm like, you know what? Fine. I'm going to make a bar that's too short for the people with the stilts. So the next year I come back and I make the shortest bar at Burning Man. It was like a foot and a half tall, fully functional bar. Wow. And at many times it was the most popular bar on our street. It was amazing. So awesome. It had music playing and everyone's just sitting in like little mini chairs and I was the one little mini bartender and it was such a hit. And I had a really cool game that was just amazing. Everyone loved. Or people would you'd spin this wheel. There was gifts in all these little jars that you couldn't see though. And you would take it, but you would leave something. So you would either leave a note, a question, or a gift for the next person. Cool. And so all day I'm watching how these gifts change hands with a new person. And
I like that.
These messages that people would write were just insane. Like one person, he opened this little note and he just started crying. And I was like, are you open to sharing? And he's like, absolutely. He's like, this says like, what was your fondest memory or what was your favorite memory with your father? And he's like, literally, I just came from spreading some of his ashes on the playa. Wow. And we just all started crying. I'm crying right now.
Wow. That's, goosebumps. Ooh, yeah. That's amazing.
So the next year, or maybe it was 2 years later, I wanted to do another project. And I'm like, okay. And I've always been in charge of like the bars more so of our camp. Okay. And we have a water bar, and then we do the alcohol bars, and we have like mocktail bars too. So all of it, yeah.
Nice, I love that.
And I'm like, well, where do you go from the shortest bar at Burning Man? Let's make the tallest bar at Burning Man, right? And so we made a 3-story tall tiki bar, and it had a slide from the top into a gymnastics foam pit, and I was the lead of that. And it was like my little brainchild, and I was so supported by my camp. It was incredible. I had so much help, and like the men in our camp are just literally astounding. And it was so fun. Like, and it was a total hit. It was fun to watch like full-grown adults climbing up the ladder, shooting down the slide, and the view from the top was like outstanding.
I bet.
Yeah, and it was too tall for the people with stilts.
I love it. You said.
I really have nothing against people with stilts. It's just like an inside joke with myself that I just ran.
I love that. Have you ever been on stilts even? That's such a random...
maybe I should hit up Piper because he's always on stilts.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And Burning Man is way beyond, because I've been to a lot of music festivals. It's way beyond just the music festival. There's so much more than that going on, right? Like there is music, and there is art, and there is people partying.
Yeah.
But like, what have been some of your like few favorite kind of like takeaways from Burning Man, or moments or experiences, or just, I know that's probably really hard to answer, but just whatever comes to mind, you know?
Yeah.
Whatever's left an impression on your mind or your heart, or...
Goodness. Like, I really see Burning Man as like a medicine in a lot of ways. Like, I'm not like going out and preaching that, but if I were to like pick a metaphor for it, it's really a medicine. Like, kind of like similar, not saying it's completely the same as like going into like a plant medicine ceremony.
Right.
You go in and you have this experience, and your mind is expanded in ways that you never had before, that are specific to that plant, right? Or that experience or that ceremony. And then you integrate that back into your life. Burning Man is like that too. It's like this medicine. You step into this portal, this vortex of human imagination, and you're just exposed to not only like survival, because it's really freaking hard out there.
Right. That's a big part.
Yeah, but you're like seeing what's possible. And I think that's the really potent takeaway for me, is like seeing what's possible, and also like seeing how beautiful people's minds are. And so it like gives you this permission to be you.
Yeah.
You know, like be authentic, be different.
Right.
Right. And accept other people for their differences.
Yep.
And let's show up in love, and let's connect and vibe, and like, and it just like, I mean, I love art. You see my room. There's a lot of art.
Full of art.
Yeah. I love creating. I love all of that. So that's like really important to me too. And just like, yeah, the possibilities, I think that's really what it is. So anyway, I think I'm not going, so I don't think I'm going this year, because I feel full of the medicine from Burning Man. I feel like I'm good right now.
Right.
And I also think almost everybody should go and get that experience, because you're gonna learn something, because it's really intense.
Yeah.
It is really intense.
Maybe one of the most intense things you've ever done, and you've done a lot of intense things.
It's pretty intense. It's different though. It's different than like Israel was really intense too, right? Like that was super emotional, and really like they live a very different way than we do. And like, this isn't even talking about poverty. Like, this is just, I mean, that's there too, but it's like the wars, you know, and the tension and the history and all that, that's intense, right? Yeah. And then there's like the intensity of like seeing like poverty in Cambodia, you know, and like and like things like that, and you know, different places in Asia that I was like, wow, this is like really poor,
right? You
know, or poverty.
Yep.
And that's intense in like an emotional way, like, you know, it's like, oof, like I feel that, and like I want to like change the world, and I want to help them, and like things.
I feel
Burning Man's intense in like a survival, like it's like pushing your consciousness, you know, like it's an energetic intensity.
Like, for people that haven't been, just paint the picture a little bit more. Like, what does an intense moment at Burning Man look like? Like, it's 100+ degrees, and like, what's happening?
It's like 100+ degrees in the day.
Yep.
And it drops down to, it could be like 30 at night.
Wow.
And there's whiteouts and dust, like there's dust storms, and you're hungry and you're hot and you're like exhausted. You're riding a bike everywhere, and like I've only had an e-bike 1 year. Every other year was like push pedal bikes, you know, and it's hard to sleep. Like, it actually, I feel like, has gotten more intense, because when I first started going, there was only like a couple big like sound systems, you know, so sleeping was more available as far as quietness goes, I felt like, and then now, like last year, it was just like, honestly, probably another reason I'm not going back this year is just a little stressful, because everybody has top of the line, loud, blasting systems.
Wow.
So like when you're trying to sleep, it almost like I've never been in a war, but like it was like feeling like I was like having some past life like regression flashbacks of like war, because it was like, you know, it's just so loud.
Yeah.
It's shaking everything, like
all throughout the night, even,
all
right?
Night,
all
till
day,
morning,
all night,
all day, all night. And I don't really like that anymore.
Yeah.
I've never really liked it, but it's like so there now that it's just a little different than when I first started going. But like, yeah, that was my struggle that I had to overcome. And I'm like laying there trying to go to sleep and exhausted and like calming myself down and talking myself through it and nurturing my inner child. Right. So there's a lot of experiences like that there. Where you do have to like kind of hone it in. And like another thing is like if you lose your friends at Burning Man, you might not see them until Burning Man ends.
Wow.
Yeah, because you might not be at camp at the same time ever again. It's so big. It's like you do find the people you're meant to find.
Yeah.
But like sometimes when you're searching too hard for them, you block yourself and you end up on a solo trip, which gives you the opportunity to meet new people. But if you put that boundary up where you're not gonna like meet new people or something like that, it's a really intense experience.
For sure.
You're like, all I want is my friends and that comfort, and that safety blanket's gone. And you're there with like thousands of lasers, hundreds of sound systems, and open space. And like when you first go for the first time, navigating can be kind of hard because there's, you know, it's huge. It's like miles big.
Right.
And then a dust storm comes and you can't see anything. It's like, it really is a
I'm
trap.
stressed out right now.
I know.
Hearing this.
Change subjects.
So let's talk about a subject that's very calming, which is one of your,
gears.
which is your herbal tinctures. Talk about those. I love making those, and they've been something that have come into handy use at Burning Man and many other places.
Yeah.
What are those all about?
Yeah, I love working with herbs, like so much. So I have a whole tincture line that I make at Solarè at my clinic, and started making them in school, which was really cool. And they're for a lot of different things. I have one for food poisoning and upset stomachs. I have one for anxiety, depression, insomnia, sore throat, common cold prevention that I actually used through all of COVID and never got COVID. And yeah, it's
careful
amazing.
Now, we don't want to get censored. I'm kidding.
Oh yeah.
I'm totally kidding. I've actually had an episode taken off of YouTube because I had a naturopathic doctor on there talking about how he treated his patients during COVID. Didn't have a single one go to the hospital, didn't lose a single one.
Good for him.
All with natural treatments. And it got taken off YouTube for him saying that. What a crazy world we live in, right?
Jeez.
I don't want to get down
Let's
that
not
rabbit
go down
hole.
that rabbit hole because I feel that rabbit hole. That's crazy.
But yeah, censorship is so real. But yeah, anyway, back to the tincture.
I thought we were going in a peaceful direction.
I know. Sorry.
Yeah, I love Chinese tinctures, Chinese herbal tinctures. And the reason being is that, so the way that I see it is, so for those who don't know, there's lots of ways you can make tinctures. I use alcohol based, and there's a reason for that. I basically have these giant jars, and I put vodka in it, really nice quality vodka, clean, distilled, like multiple, very distilled.
Super distilled.
Super distilled. I don't know how many times, but
4 or 5 at least.
I think it's 5. Yeah. And then I put specific, like very special formulas of Chinese herbs in there. And Chinese herbs are very unique. They're grown in China. They're prepped in these certain ways. They're not things that we're used to here. It's not just like lavender. It's like dongui and like other things like that. And they sit in the alcohol. And what happens is, and this is my philosophy on it. So call from alcohol is like it means to extract the spirit. And so, like that could work for you, against you, right? You can take that or leave it however you want. But when it comes to plants, like I do believe that plants have spirits. And when I think of extracting the spirit, I'm extracting the most potent qualities of that herb and putting it into the tincture. And so that's why I like alcohol based, because it's what I'm doing. Like I want to make a potent medicine. Right. And then also, like, of course, there's like alcohol goes into your bloodstream in like 20 seconds. So they work fast, which is what you want when you're having a panic attack or you're, have food poisoning and something like that. You want it to work quickly. So put it under your tongue, it enters your bloodstream. It brings all the spirit of the alcohol, of the plant into your bloodstream super fast and super effective. So I really I love my tinctures. I've been doing it for a while, and I've sold like, I don't know, probably 1,000 bottles, just word of mouth. Amazing. Yeah, it's been cool. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I've definitely tried your anxiety, insomnia one, and I've taken a few dropperfuls at night, and it's really nice. It helps kind of like bring you down and calming and peaceful. And
I love tinctures as well. In naturopathic medicine, we learned a lot about herbs, and the alcohol tinctures can be a little intense, but it's a medicine. It's not meant to necessarily taste the best.
Totally, right?
It's effective, that's for sure.
I know. Some people like the taste and some definitely don't. They're like, woo!
Yeah.
Like, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. That's cool. Now, I didn't know you had so many different formulas. That's awesome. So how many different ones exactly do you know?
I think I have, right now I think I have 5.
Cool.
Yeah, 5 or 6. But there's some that I mostly, there's like more popular ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that would be the anxiety, depression, insomnia, sore throat, and food poisoning are like the most potent or popular.
And the anxiety one, you've had many cases of people using it at Burning Man, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of bringing them out.
Yes, totally. Like bad trips.
Yeah.
People having bad trips. Yeah. And it's also really good for like people coming down off of things. Because it balances out the serotonin and dopamine in your brain. And it's long lasting, and it's like not needed. You don't have to keep taking it.
Right.
It actually works really, really well, and it lasts a long time. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I've had people also like having like super bad trips. It's funny. It kind of like turned into this thing where like when anybody was having a bad trip, they would come find me, and I was like, okay, this is kind of getting a lot, but then you can't say no, know. So
like you didn't even know who they were. And
yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah, tincture, and then like I would do like a little acupressure points and just really like you a lot of time, and everybody take note of this. A lot of the time when people are having a bad trip, you just have to be present with them and remind them that they're a really good person. You're a good person. You're gonna like, oh my gosh, I love when did you just smile? Like, and bring them back to Solarè, which is why I named my clinic that. It's like remind them that they're full of light, and they're gonna be okay. And the sun will shine again. This isn't forever. The sun will come back out, which is like Solarè has a lot to do with the sun. And
yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Whole big rabbit hole of a topic, but personal psychedelic experiences, anything you want to share, anything that's come up over your journeys. I know that's a big topic and another full podcast as well. Is that something you want to talk about? Do you want to go there? Do you want to leave it for another time? How do you feel?
I'm actually really open with, I love psychedelics a lot. Like, I think that they are so amazing because we are, of course, these physical beings, but we are so energetic.
Yeah.
And psychedelics really allow you to go there.
Yeah.
And like we're these we're souls, right? And what beautiful gift we have is like to go into these like spiritual realms and kind of like, you can lose your body or stay in it, right, in a psychedelic experience, but it's also really cool to kind of like disattach from it sometimes and really just like explore like these different dimensions per se, right?
Yep.
Or to see things in a different way and unlock these parts of your brain and your mind and create a different path that never existed before. It's snapping you out of the norm.
Yeah. And
I do have a lot, I have so many theories on consciousness, but I will say that one that I do believe it's like my own thing that I made up, and I don't care how crazy it sounds, but I think in the same way that like all through cultures, like different, African, like Middle Eastern, whatever it is, like this nomadic desire that humans have, even me, like, right? Like the desire I've always had to travel, like physically. I think that humans also have that desire to travel energetically.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everybody's doing psychedelics, but I think it's really interesting to notice that every single culture has some kind of altering substance.
Yeah.
Right? Like whether it's like the Irish really like beer. Oh my God.
Coco.
Koa just farted.
That was cute.
Koa's my doggy. He's stretched and he just tooted.
He's fast asleep and he just gave us a little.
So cute.
Oh, he's been a good boy.
He's just such a good boy. But yeah, I think that it's no different that there's this nomadic desire physically to travel, and like people have a desire to travel through different realms or whatever you want to call it. But,
I love that.
Yeah, and then I have like this theory that this one, like the sober one, is like kind of like this contract we've all made with each other of like, this is home. You know, like we all come back to this space, and that we need to come back to this space. We can't live always in these other places in our minds, or in dimensions or realms, or whatever suits your, you know, we want to call it. And that's why, like, sometimes when there is somebody, like, you know, you see the guy on the homeless man on the street that's really separated from this realm, it make you feel like something in your heart that is sad, basically. You know, and you're like, oh, like, he didn't come back home. It's really, like, I don't know, like, this is just kind of how my mind
never heard it put that way. That makes a lot of sense. And like, I think people are really can be hard on themselves for like wanting to, like, you know, travel and explore these like different parts of their minds, but I think it's part of our human nature, and I think it's a gift. Of course, be safe. Of course, be in a safe space. Of course, make sure you're mentally in a space that you can do that. And if you're doing it for a breakthrough, like, you know, in a ceremony, make sure that you trust the facilitators. Like, I want to definitely disclaim, like, you know, but you know, all of that matters. And that's 100% needed. I do not, in my private practice, I'm not telling people to go and do psychedelics. You know, but I do in my personal life think that they're really amazing. And I'm a huge fan. And I'm a huge fan of safety. And I'm a huge fan of like making sure, like maybe talking to your therapist and making sure that that's right for you, you know, and checking in with yourself, because everything's not for everyone. And a therapist that is aware of these things and maybe has experience with them, if you're interested in going down that path, because a lot of the mainstream therapy and psychiatry and psychology, they're catching up to this, and they're realizing how powerful of a tool this can be for mental health. But a lot of them are kind of still stuck in the old paradigm of like, oh, those are bad drugs and they're gonna make you go crazy. And it's like, there's a lot of stigma around these medicines, you know, and it's like they've been used for thousands of years all around the world for medicine or for spiritual healing. And so just in the last, whatever, 70, 80 years or whatever in this country, they became illegal and criminalized and stigmatized and all these things. But we're not saying everybody go do psychedelics. It's just like, if you have any curiosity or interest, make sure you go about it the right way, safely, with somebody you trust. It's definitely not something to be taken lightly. But also, you don't want to take it too seriously either. You know? It's like a balance.
I love that.
And so, you know, balance is a big thing in Chinese medicine, the yin and the yang.
And I'm a Libra.
There you go. And I'm a Scorpio Libra cusp. So here we are. All about preaching balance. Cool.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's cool too how much is available, because you could go like super like lab, you know, style with like the ketamine. Synthetic, the ketamine therapy. Or you could go super into the roots and ancestral, and there's a lot of availability there. And like, I love that there's that huge spectrum, because it is so beautiful to see both.
And it can all be effective. Like, there's studies that show ketamine therapy is useful for depression. And there's also studies that show psilocybin mushroom therapy and ayahuasca. It's like many paths, one truth. You know, like they're all just tools to help you get deeper into yourself. And explore consciousness and your surroundings. I love that. It's a natural tendency. Mesa, my friend, said that on a previous podcast about it's a natural desire to want to change our consciousness. Like, even little kids will spin around in circles so that they can get all dizzy and kind of feel like, ooh. Like, why did they do that? It's just a natural desire.
Same thing. That's like what I'm discovering, you know, or that's what I'm also saying. Like, I love that she said that. So it kind of reminded me of that, of like, it's just a natural thing. So we shouldn't feel so down on ourselves of like, why do I want to do this? I think there's a lot of that comes from society and culture of like, this is good and this isn't. You know, like, your doctor prescribed this pill, so that's okay. But you taking something on your own, oh, now you're getting crazy, you know, like, careful. It's like, well, how about the pills that doctors prescribe that, you know, put us in this opioid epidemic that 120 people overdose and die from opioids every day?
in this country. That's a legal prescribed doctor drug, right?
Makes no sense.
Yeah. And it's like when there's all these other alternatives like acupuncture, like cannabis, even as a medicine for pain, like so many other things. So it's like just opening your mind to the opportunity, to the potentials out there, you know?
Totally. Yeah. I love it. I'm a huge fan. Huge fan of psychedelics. To answer that question all
Perfect.
Summed up.
We
Yeah.
can use that clip and quote you right there about. So I want to talk more about acupuncture because it's you know what you do all day and that's your love, and so dig deeper into that a little bit. Tell me about your journey at Solarè. Tell me about you know your acupuncture, like specifically the way that you do it is really cool. Like you stay in the room the whole time. That's very unique, where a lot of acupuncturists will just needle you and then they leave the room and they're like, okay, let's lay there for a while, I'll be back. Yeah, you know. So talk about your process, how it's different, and just maybe a couple of unique kind of cool patient cases that you're like, wow, this really stood out, like acupuncture.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I love that we're going back to acupuncture. It's great. Yeah. So I definitely run my practice different than a lot of acupuncturists. And I specialize in mental health. And I chose that just through my own mental health journey. And I really feel like I have a gift of being really present with people, and that's what people need. Right. I mean, we all need that.
Sure.
But specifically when you're working with mental health and people going through like really intense like depression or they want to kill themselves, you know, like that's someone that really needs a safe space to be held. Sure. And especially post-pandemic, that's when I really noticed that people needed that. They needed to be able to come and feel safe and feel seen and feel heard and validated, not told that they're wrong for how their thoughts are taking them and how they're feeling, but to feel validated and then loved and supported into the direction that they want to go, and I want to help them go, which is to heal. So post-pandemic, I made the decision that I was not going to leave the room. And I was going to be available if people wanted to talk, you know, during their experience with the acupuncture needles in. I'll do some hands-on like head massage, neck massage kind of energy work that I've created on my own.
The healing touch.
Yeah, the healing touch.
Which I love. It's a really nice touch. Call it. Really nice touch.
Nice touch. And just like I created a space for people to come be themselves, be open, and be nurtured.
Love that. Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely have a very nurturing style. I definitely stay in the room and do a lot of moxa, which is mugwort, but we use it and we burn it in different ways. And I find it's very nurturing too. And then my specific style, I use a lot of extraordinary channels, which is kind of a niche in Chinese medicine. Like, there's orthopedic acupuncture, which is, you know, more intense, like bigger needles, bigger reactions,
deeper needling,
more feeling, you know. And I do that, but not. That's usually when I have like a bigger athlete come in, which I do treat a lot of athletes. I attract them a lot as well, and but when I work with my my mental emotional cases, I do these things called extraordinary channels, and there's a handful of combinations where you're opening and closing doors basically in the body. I'm gonna try to simplify it as best as I can. Sure. And like different combinations treat different parts of your emotional body. Cool. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I remember learning about that briefly because I took like a 100-hour acupuncture certificate course. So I learned about the channels, a little bit of theory, like real surface level. Yeah. But I remember extraordinary channels are like kind of on the fringe. Of course you're into that.
Yeah, and Luo channels is like the other like emotional, like they're pretty cool. Yeah, Luo points, I guess more so, but he works with the Luo, L-U-O. Okay. For anyone who wants to look deeper into it. Okay. It's definitely like a little side trip from the normal Chinese medicine point combinations and stuff, if that makes sense. Cool. And they work so well. It's crazy. One time I had a case, and male whose father had passed, and he was having a hard time facing that, which I totally understand.
Of course.
And he was coming to me to help process that experience. And I did a Luo extraordinary point combinations on him. And within like a couple, like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, I checked on him. I looked up. I was sitting at my desk because I was letting him rest at that point. And I looked up and I'm like, he's really sweaty. Like really sweaty. And so I went a little closer to just like investigate, and I'm like, wow, like the center of his back, like, the little divot that goes down your spine into your lower back was full of water.
Whoa.
Like the whole thing. And the table, like I just decided to stand right there and just see. He was dripping sweat. Like the whole table eventually was soaked. And he's actually diabetic. So I checked in with him and I said, blah blah blah, were your levels today, did you eat, blah 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 blah. And he's like, they're totally normal, like but I decided at a certain point, like I wanted to let what was happening happen, but then also since he was diabetic, I said we got to check your levels. And so we checked his levels. He was still drenched in sweat. I wiped him off. I was like, and then his levels were normal. I still had him. They were like slightly low, but within range. And so I gave him a granola bar because I always have those on hand. And he ate a little, and we got it perfect. And he was like, it definitely wasn't that. He was like, he was smiling, like ear to ear. And he was like, I haven't felt this light in months, like, and especially because his dad was sick for a while. And he's like, I literally just feel like I had the purge that I needed. And it turns out, so sweat is the fluid of the heart. So there's like that opening of the heart, like when when you're like really holding something so tight and it's painful and it's sad and you don't want to let it go. It's like that release that he had was really his heart, like crying.
Right?
It's like, it was really potent. And we cried a little bit together, and he felt fine eventually. Like he felt fine actually. He's like, I feel totally normal. I just was going based on like, it was really interesting. And he said like it shifted his path, from then on forward, and he was able to process a lot more and go there. And
that's amazing.
Hopefully I told that clearly.
You got me really thinking now, because I've dealt with like excessive sweating in my life, and I've never had anybody talk about the heart.
Well,
so that makes me think about that.
That might be a little different.
It's different.
Yeah,
because that's a constant thing.
Well, yeah, and also it's like when you are like, if you sweat spontaneously, it's more in the lungs,
right? And
the opening and closing of the pores. Yeah, so it could be even like a yang, or like there could be a yin yang imbalance, but also like a deficiency of the lungs, like so. Smoke, like
smoking,
like smoking and things like that. Creating a deficiency in the lungs, and then it's not controlling the pores the right way, and then you get spontaneous sweating.
Makes sense. And I think I've told you this, but while I was in school, I was working on the hyperhidrosis, so excessive sweating in the clinic, and I did chiropractic stuff, and they're like, oh, it's a sympathetic thing, you got to just adjust your neck and it's gonna help. And I'm like, okay, let's try it out. And then I did naturopathic stuff with sauna and diets and all these things, right? And then the Chinese medicine side of the clinic, we did acupuncture and different herbs. By far, the Chinese medicine helped me the most with the sweating, than anything else I ever tried.
What did they do?
I don't remember exactly, but it was I remember them saying you have lung heat, which as you said, and then a spleen qi deficiency, but I don't remember beyond that. They got in depth into the Chinese, like the deficiency, and I don't know, but it was pretty amazing to me of like how much that helped, and more than anything else. So shout out Chinese medicine and herbs specifically. I
love when people say that. Chinese medicine works.
It definitely, there's a reason why that, don't they have acupuncture in hospitals now for anesthesia?
In China.
Yeah. Like
in China, they have this case where this woman, I hope I'm saying this right, she was having either brain surgery or heart surgery. And she just had acupuncture as her anesthesia. And she was fine. She's like, I think she even like was I don't know. I saw it in school, but
Wow.
It's been a while. I've been out of school for a while, but
that's amazing.
Yeah, crazy. Like China does a lot of like mixing of Western and Eastern, from what I've heard. I haven't been yet.
I've been, but it was like a tourist type of it was actually a Groupon. Me and my dad. It was crazy. It was the craziest deal ever. It was 4 different cities in China. All of the tours included most of the food, airfare, and hotel. 10 days. All of that included, and it was $1,400 a person. Yeah.
Wow.
It was insane.
For how long?
10 days.
Whoa.
Round trip from Chicago to China. Yeah. It was crazy.
That's a sweet Groupon.
It was a great Groupon. Yeah, I mean, my dad went. It was like 8 years ago. But
it's so random.
It was awesome. And we did go to a Chinese medicine like clinic, and they did like, the pulses, and it's just amazing how much you can determine from that. Yeah. Yeah. And they gave us some herbs, and then that was it. But
sometimes I go to work and like I do I follow what I learned in school a lot, right? Like that's why we did it. But like I'm like, how and who discovered this? And like it works. But like who's the first, like I don't know, like the tongue, the pulses, the points, like the location of the points and what they do, and the herbs, like wouldn't want to be the test dummy for the herbs. But then like there's certain herbs we have that are like flying squirrel poop.
No
is
way.
An herb. Yeah. Or like in my sore throat tincture, I use cicada skins.
Wow.
Yeah, because cicadas sing. And if you lose your voice, you want to use something that sings.
Wow.
Right?
Isn't that amazing?
It's interesting. And it's like, of course, like that makes sense in this funny way that we're not used to thinking about.
Right. They really take into account the energetics of things way more so. Yeah. Than just like, oh, it has this chemical, so it's going to do this to your biochemistry. It's like, that's one aspect of it. It's not the only one. So
it's amazing. And that goes back, to mind, body, and spirit. And like the entirety of like this world we're living in.
So I want to get super practical for people. Mental health. It's such a big topic. It's so big. It's so deep and complex. But what have you found to be the most useful in your path and your journey with mental health? Or like, what have you found to be the most helpful for patients of yours? Like, what would you say to people out there in the mental health struggle? I mean, if people are being honest, I feel like that's almost everybody, but in one way or another. But to like, mental health is so important, and it's so often overlooked. It's so much easier to change your diet and do all these things, whatever. But like, go to your childhood traumas. Not so fun sometimes. So what do you have to say about that? Yeah,
I think asking the right questions is huge when it comes to really figuring out, because it's about where is it coming from, right? And once you can grasp that, things get a little bit easier. But I think asking the right questions is huge. And I feel like I do a good job of that. And that's like why it works well in my clinic. And like specializing and customizing that to each person through listening really deeply to their experience and what they're going through. And then of course like journaling, is huge, because like I think I always recommend journaling because it takes the storm that's happening in your head and it settles it on paper and it makes it more tangible. And you can say like, okay, now I see it. Instead of like, I'm just feeling it. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. And that's so much emotion. And like, not saying the emotion goes away, but at least when you can see it, you're not just feeling it and it's tangible for you again. I'm gonna sit like this now.
Yeah.
My foot's asleep.
We're coming up on an hour 15 here.
Yeah.
I didn't say, by the way, at the beginning, but there's no set time. We could stop soon here. We could go for 2 hours. I mean, we can, however we're flowing. So
cool. But yeah, mental health, like definitely, but like, diet is huge.
For sure.
Huge. Especially in America. You got to clean your stuff up, because that's just going to fog your brain, fog your body. If things aren't moving properly, it's all energy.
Yep.
So if you're eating stuff that doesn't digest very well and it stagnates in your body, then your emotions are gonna do the same thing. Like we talk about chi and blood stagnation a lot.
Yep.
So diet's huge, movement's huge, journaling's huge, and then on top of that stuff, asking yourself the right questions to figure out where it's coming from. You become your own detective and become curious. Like approaching yourself from curiosity instead of judgment is huge. And it's also a really nice tool to work with the people around you.
Right.
Right? Because like people are going to piss you off.
Right.
And you can be mad about it, but it's better to be curious about it.
Yep.
And approach them in a curious way.
Yep.
And you should do that to yourself. At my clinic, I do a lot of inner child work with people. Yeah. If they're ready and if they want it.
And what is that like? Just I don't think anybody's ever talked about inner child stuff on this podcast.
Oh, cool.
Like, what does that mean to anybody that's never heard of what an inner child means? Like, how do you describe that?
So each of us have that 7-year-old version of ourselves still inside of us. And that 7-year-old version of you, your inner child, needs to be nurtured by you all the time for the rest of your life. And when you have experiences where like you're triggered and upset and you're trying to figure out, okay, like, where is this coming from? If you don't know the exact thing, and start with your inner child and say, what if, and we don't talk to 7-year-olds like, get your fucking shit together, you suck, right? Oh my God, how terrible. I mean, I hope we don't. Right. There is, that's happening, but for the sake of this example,
for sure,
we don't do that. We talk to our 7-year-old like, oh, sweetie, you're going to be okay. I'm here for you. I see you. I see that you're hurting right now. And I want you to know that I am here for you. And you wrap your arms around them and you hold them. And we have to do that for ourselves too. So when something's coming up for you and it's like really painful and you don't know why it's happening, start with your inner child and just look at yourself within and imagine looking at the face of the 7-year-old you. See what it looks like. If you don't remember, pull up a photo.
Wow.
And
love that.
And say, I got you. It's going to be okay. And smile, and really mean it and say, I see that you're hurting and it's okay to cry right now. That's totally valid because you're in pain. But I want you to know that this will pass. Yeah. And saying that, I think that's really powerful.
That's really nice.
And oftentimes people will find through that conversation with their inner child, they start to notice where in their childhood these traumas started to unfold and grow. Yeah.
That makes sense. Kind of like they call it kind of like reparenting, right? Like reparenting yourself. Maybe if you didn't have the best parenting or parents did the best job they could with what they knew at the time, right? And so it's about being able to reparent ourselves in the moment. Like you've said before, it's never too late to have a good childhood.
Totally. And I got that from Dom, actually.
Oh, perfect. Shout out Dom.
Every single parent is going to create trauma in their kids.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
So we have to all accept that. Like, and of course there's a very big range of that trauma.
Right.
But we all have trauma, So yeah, going back to it, we were talking about, it's like, just notice where it came from and then love yourself and reparent yourself because you have to do that. Yeah. All of us have to do it.
Right. And there's this thing in the healing communities of like, we're always healing. We're healing. We got to, work on our healing. And it's like people can get kind of like stuck in this path of healing. And that's fine. I can see that. But then also like there's this time where it's like we got to be healed now in this moment while we're working on, it's like both of them are happening at the same time.
Totally. Sometimes healing is taking a fucking break from trying so hard to heal.
Right.
Right. We're not like, it's like, I love my work. I love going to Solarè. I have so much pride in what I do. I would do it for free, and I don't like want to do it all the time. Like I want to also hang out with you at my house and get really silly or like go out to dinner, and not be working like in that one area all
Right.
the time. And I think like people are so hard on themselves.
Oh yeah.
And they get obsessed.
Yep.
And it's like, wait a second, like we got gifted this human experience, and there is things to enjoy and indulge in. I think that's okay.
100%.
Take a break. Go sit on the beach with a pina colada in Mexico and just like don't think about anything.
Yeah.
Except for that moment.
Yep.
You know, or like whatever your version of that is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I very much resonate with that. I think we're both very big advocates on on the other side of life, on remembering to have fun and enjoy, and you know, life is a celebration, and we need to remember to celebrate and not take it so seriously, you know. Nobody ever wishes they worked more on their deathbeds.
Totally.
So
totally.
It's like, you know, enjoying that while we have it.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about your mead making, because I know you love it so much. Talk to me about mead. Honestly, I didn't have mead for my first time until Lucidity with Divina.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
she good mead that her friend makes.
Yep.
Yeah, I love, that's actually a great segue, because mead is like one of those things that's a fun hobby, and I just do it because I just think it's so fun. And I love getting everyone together and drinking some mead and like, yeah, so I've been making it's honey wine or Viking wine. So it's honey based. And this batch that I have right now is like 5 different flavors, from like, I have a wildflower one, I have like blueberry sage, I have a jalapeno orange one. Ooh. And it's just like, it's a fun process of fermentation and working with yeast to make a tasty beverage that does have an alcohol content to it. And yeah, it's just a blast. It's like another way to work with the herbs. So I do I make mead, I make the tinctures at work, and then I make kombucha, and I'll flavor that too. And it's just so fun. It's so fun to share these things. Get people, any reason to get people together. You know, I love having just like constant flow of family and friends here all the time.
You're a big entertainer.
Yeah.
And host. I love it. Super host. You'd have the super host status on Airbnb if you're a host.
Yes. Oh, it's amazing. I love to have the gathering place. I come from a huge family. Yeah. And like just wild Italians. Yeah. Even though I'm mixed. I am African and European, but our family that we grew up in is like so Italian, and they're loud, and we're like, it's overwhelming for people not prepared for it or didn't come from something similar.
Right.
But I love it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I attract a lot of that fun playfulness here too at my place.
Totally. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been real honor and joy and pleasure being over here a bunch over these last few months.
Yeah.
We've really become fast friends, and it's been amazing. Really grateful for you and our friendship, and much more to come. We're just getting started.
Yeah, totally. Oh my God, you've become one of my closest friends. Like, it's been amazing. Yeah, I'm so grateful for you. We have so much fun.
Yeah.
And we go so deep. Like, I always love like in you're one of these people, like someone you can like be laughing one moment with, and then you're like talking about something super heavy the next moment, and then you can go back to laughing, you know? And it's just like, okay, cool. Like we can just go there and be real.
For sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you, and I'm so proud of all the things you're creating.
Thank you. I'm really excited. Really excited.
Can't wait to see your book.
Yes. Stay tuned. I'm working on it. Little by little, it's coming together. So, okay, what else do you have on your mind, on your heart, that you want to share with people? I feel like this is a pretty good spot to end, but I'd love to, give you some space to share whatever else you have on your mind, or something we didn't talk about you want to make sure people know about you, or your life, or your practice, or just whatever.
Yeah.
A final message to the world.
Totally.
For this episode.
Yeah, I feel I'm like, this is a good place too. Well, I also have a book. I have a poetry book.
That's right.
Called Elephants Made of Leaves. It's on Amazon.
That's amazing.
And it's really fun. It's like a coffee table book. But as far as, closing thoughts, I just want everybody who's listening to this to just know I'm so proud of you. Even if I don't know you, like, you're crushing it, and life is freaking hard sometimes. And I'm just really proud of every single person that is here being present with themselves, or seeking out new information, or doing whatever you're doing, and whatever you got through yesterday that was difficult. Great job. And just keep thriving and keep doing it and keep breathing. And as long as you're breathing, you're going to be okay. So just know that, and that everything will pass, right? Enjoy the highs and try to enjoy the lows, because they are the ones that are going to really define who you are. And that's cool. And you should love that about that, because who you are is amazing. And you're, all these challenges that you overcome become these potent tools in your toolbox that you get to go out and freaking crush it with, and help other people with, and then things get easier. Yeah. Things get easier with the more exposure you have to the full spectrum of life.
Whew. Wow. Love that. I think that's a perfect ending. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and who you are. Keep shining bright.
Thanks. I love you.
I love you too. And till next time.
See you later.